Hey everyone, and thanks for joining another episode of DIB Innovators. Today I'm speaking with Ash Parikh, co-CEO at Doodle Labs. Ash, thanks for joining today.
Dude, thanks for having us, Dave.
No, it's going to be exciting. I love what you guys are doing. It's pretty cool. But before we get into that, you've got kind of a unique background. I think the founder or, leadership journey is always such a fun one, origin story, if you will. Talk to me about how I know you were in consulting, doing some other things, and then became, co-CEO at Doodle Labs. But let's talk a little bit about that and, also then follow up with Doodle Labs. Where did it come from and what is with the name?
I'll try and weave the two stories together. I studied electrical engineering in college. I loved building and designing things. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to go build. And so I found that electrical engineering gave a really good foundation for a number of things. But kind of continuing on that journey of not exactly knowing what to do, I went kind of this neutral route of working at McKinsey for a number of years, which actually I genuinely really enjoyed. As much as we knock on the consulting space these days, it was actually a really great place to work early in my career. Worked with a whole bunch of different companies and a bunch of different types of projects and situations. And so it gave a lot of very good general business foundations.
Yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
think correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not done management consulting, but those that I've seen done have a very unique perspective and growth of a skill set that's very hard to come by without it.
Totally. And it's also changing a lot in today's AI age. But I mean, this is for me, I mean, I'm a little bit older now. This was 20 years ago. So at that time, it was, pretty cutting edge stuff. And starting there at 22-year-old is pretty incredible. I mean, I was getting, I had my manager down my throat about how to structure and write my emails, which was actually like a really good, a good training that, when you're at that age. But I still kind of lean on a lot of those things today. I mean, one of the things that's continued from there is the ability to structure problems and how to execute quickly and organize people around there. And so, as you're saying, there's a lot of just general business and execution principles that I try and hold on to that have been quite useful. I will say though that it was hard to be super motivated about it though, because the level of impact we were having just wasn't there. I mean, being on the outside and having a few month-long projects, it's hard to really have ownership over it. And I really wasn't feeding that technology and wanting to build something itch that I had, even that, drove me into engineering back in college. Joining this business, actually, I'm not sure if you knew this, Dave, but this company was started by my dad about 25 years ago. Yeah. He one of the first companies out there to do long range Wi-Fi was his company, Smart Bridges. And so for my brother and I, we watched him, middle school and high school building this company and really pushing the envelope on a number of things. I mean, in the early 2000s, Wi-Fi was pretty novel. We were still plugging RJ40, like Ethernet jack ports into our Ethernet jacks. And so,
Oh, I remember.
yeah. And so what they had developed was a way to take early Wi-Fi and do very long range implementations for it. So they were doing things like instead of laying cable down to give internet to a town, this was, the long range infrastructure. One of the coolest projects they did back then, I remember, it was like they powered the first, or probably only cyber cafe at Everest Base Camp. And so it was just really cool stuff I was watching him build. And we were always, being the son of the CEO, we were always, watching and kind of peripherally involved, if you will. It was about, I don't know, maybe about 9 years ago or so though, that we saw I got really interested in partnering with him. The business was evolving from, this type of long range Wi-Fi infrastructure into moving into the embedded space. And what I mean by that is designing in the technology into other robotic systems or into other people's vehicles. We started doing some aviation projects and things like that. And I started seeing a lot of the real rise in these things, and the opportunity to help lead an organization with that was kind of really helped offer a platform for me to help build things. So this was maybe about 9 years ago or so. It kind of ties into your question about how Doodle Labs came about. So what Doodle Labs essentially was a spin out of that company, Smart Bridges, I was mentioning to you. And Smart Bridges was doing, the big infrastructure for long range Wi-Fi. Doodle Labs, we started getting inbounds from various defense primes, like Northrop and Harris and General Dynamics saying, hey, we have a particular system. Can you guys modify this long range wireless capability, but perhaps at this military frequency band or in a certain form factor? And so we started building out our IP through those projects. And every project kind of layer in another piece of IP. And it was about 5 years ago or so where things really started gaining a lot of traction, where we got an inbound from the US Army and DIU saying that, hey, they needed a radio for their short range reconnaissance drone program. And so it was at that time where we, put all the pieces together and kind of built what is our current platform that is thriving quite well and serving the unmanned aerial vehicle market quite well. But along the way, we had a lot of really great fun on the commercial side. I mean, we were if you remember, if you know that GoGo Wireless on airplanes, like we provide the onboard Wi-Fi for those. Every Airbus A320 has two Doodle Labs radios doing long range Wi-Fi. Boston Dynamics, the yellow spot robotic dog, that their radio is a Doodle Labs radio. So we've been doing a lot of these types of commercial, very like niche, if you will, long range Wi-Fi types of projects before we really started focusing on this defense segment just now.
That's awesome. How did you come up with Doodle Labs?
Doodle Labs it's a little bit of a playful name. There is Smart Bridges was a very serious name. And so as the team was thinking about names for this new company, Labs is a pretty serious part of it. I mean, we're doing things for very challenging environments, and there's a very much a rigor. We do feel like we're a world-class radio organization, but then there's also a lot of playfulness with the doodle, and we try and are always tinkering. We're playing with things. We're really customizing, and so it was a little bit of a mix of the two things together.
That's great. So where you are now, what would be like the one sentence mission of Doodle Labs?
We are connecting people and vehicles in the most challenging environments, allowing them to focus and complete their mission. There is a big rise in autonomy and in AI, and you're having a lot of things that are becoming like, for example, just stick with drones, very intelligent drones or vehicles they're able to execute missions on their own. But the next generation wave of this is coordination and cooperation. And we are providing that ability for things to be able to work in unison and be able to complete missions. So we believe that as much as autonomy is the next wave, you can't really do a full set of things if people aren't being able to cooperate with each other.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you get one thing that does its, whatever its mission is, but there might be 1,000 of them. It's important for them to, just like manned vehicles, to coordinate. And if this
Completely.
target doesn't go down, then I need re-roll someone and do it, take it out again, or whatever the mission. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
There is just we were talking about defense here, but if you just take even a step back, everything is connected. When I bought my house a couple years ago, it came with like the oven has Wi-Fi, like the fridge has Wi-Fi, and there's all this home autonomy. Like everything is connected, and there is a big demand for making all of that invisible. Like we don't want to deal with all that crap, and things just need to work. And that applies to in the defense segment as well. People don't want to have to be thinking about their comms. They just need to be able to execute their mission and be able to do things together.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, speaking of like sitting around and talking in front of my refrigerator and then have an ad show up on my Google.
Right.
Yes, everything is connected.
Dude, the connected oven was hilarious to me. It was like, I'm not going to be turning on my oven onto broil mode when I'm not at home. Like, what is the what is the point of this? So
Of course, if you forget to turn it off broil mode and it alerts you, that would be value.
I didn't realize that. Maybe that's where it is. It's a safety thing. There you go.
Yes. So that's great. So when I'm flying across the country and my Wi-Fi doesn't work, I can blame Doodle Labs, or should I be blaming United?
Okay. Well, in that case, United, because I'm dealing with that a lot too. It's actually particularly painful. For some reason, I just got bad luck the last couple of flights. Yeah.
You're gonna fly, which takes a chunk of time. At least you can get some work done, and then you're stuck.
Yeah. There's that Louis C.K. clip. I'm sure you've seen that where everyone all of a sudden, there's a miracle of flight, and then all of a sudden we start complaining about not being able to use Wi-Fi on the planes. But yeah,
It's all perspective.
yeah,
Well, that's great. So if I were to compare, before we get into it more, and I'm just using the example of airplanes, for example. So your Wi-Fi radios, how does that compare to something like SpaceX that's coming down with their network and providing, I'd say my knowledge is pretty thin on this, but it's a similar capability. Is it a different waveform, completely different set, or talk to me about that?
yeah. It's I you can probably think of there being three types of communication networks today that are widely used. Let's start with Starlink because you mentioned it. What Starlink is a network of satellites, and it's providing internet. Essentially, when I need to connect to internet, my device is going up to space, and the satellites connect me to the broader network. You then have, our cell coverage, so like Verizon and the sort. And so we're then connecting to a cell tower instead of satellite. And then you have our type of point to point or mesh radios, which are the radios talking directly to each other. And so we call it private wireless networks because you're not relying on infrastructure. And we spend a lot of time making our radios and our networks be able to communicate and cooperate back to the cooperation work with these various types of networks because there is pros and cons and there are reasons for using different types. So satellite is amazing because all of a sudden it's covering large swaths of the earth, providing connectivity no matter where you are. But then there are downsides. Like it takes a lot of time just from physics to set, in terms of latency, which means a lot of time to send a signal up into outer space and then back down. You can't, real time control a drone with that, right? Just because of how long it takes to send signals back and forth. In some types of drones that are moving, that are highly autonomous and, just moving on their own, you can use a satellite or a Starlink type of thing. In the defense context, there's also some security issues with this, though, because you're also relying on satellites, which can be shot down fairly easily. And so it's pretty vulnerable to, in a case of an actual war, of like, just destroying networks like that. And, on the other hand, you have our mesh radios, which are almost like the inverse, where very low latency, you're point to point, highly secure, and you can control things very rapidly, very low latency. However, it's a private network and you can't just cover large lots of the earth with that, right? So you can't do things that are super, super long distance with those.
Yeah, lower power, lower detection ability. So in this, let's say the defense application zone, contested environments, give me the pros, cons of, you know, capability brought forth by Doodle.
Right now, this type of point to point and mesh radio technology that Doodle Labs offers is the default choice for a group of, I'll call them mission sets. If you have short range and medium range mission sets, these are the types of radios that you want to be using. And it comes back to these are typically things that you need fairly low latency. You need to be able to pass large amounts of data, so some video feed or some sensor data, and you need to have them be highly secure. This is what Doodle Labs provides and what, this type of mesh protocols that we use offer. When you're trying to go, many hundreds of kilometers, across country and stuff, that's probably where you need to use some sort of satellite type of system. So we spend a lot of time focusing on that short and medium range scenarios.
Like what is short, medium definition to you?
Short range is, I don't know, maybe 20 kilometers or less. Medium range is 100 kilometers or less. And then, we've been doing field testing and proving our radios out to 300 plus kilometers. But that, again, we don't have too many customers doing that because, again, the mission kind of changes a little bit and you may, need or prefer a different type of radio in that regards.
Yeah, and to be able to have all those capabilities, different ways to access your drone, if you will, or your mission set, probably very important.
Usually, one of the things that's unique about us is that we're really, ours is really small. Actually, this is one of our radios. We have an even smaller one, but this is like our mini. And I mean, this is pretty small. This was designed for smaller drones that are going shorter distances. Usually, what's the thing that limits drones actually currently is battery, and so you can't have a small drone flying 300 kilometers. You're really going to have a pretty large drone that can have a pretty big payload, also a pretty big battery. And then in that case, you can probably also fit a pretty big high powered radio. And, everything that kind of just gives you, everything just gets bigger. But it's a lot harder to go smaller and pack all the capability into something super small, which is what we try and focus on.
So do you find in the defense side, talk to me kind of your go-to-market motion. Are you working specifically with, I would say a drone company, for example, or are you working more with sensor companies that want to pull you in with them? Like how are you attacking, that segment of the market?
Yeah, and maybe I can even comment on just the how the drone industry in general is moving. There's so many good things happening within the defense space. We view our main customers as the drone manufacturer, so the drone designer. So for example, a well-known name, Anduril. Our radio is the radio used on the Anduril Bolt drone. So their engineering team is our main customer. We spend a lot of time working with them to integrate our radios and to help them get the absolute best. And what this means, though, is actually working with the other components that you were referencing, like the cameras and the antennas and their flight controller. So we spend a lot of time making the whole system architecture work. And then, we have our team in Ukraine, which is working now directly with end users, and they're the ones who are the actually telling us, hey, here's how the stuff is working. Here's how the stuff where it's not working. And we need you guys to iterate. And so we're also getting a lot of end user feedback that then goes back into our product roadmap. So it's, there's kind of three fronts to this where we try and be very, very active. We try and be super hands-on with our customers. We try and keep in touch with all the components within the ecosystem and try and create really nice integrations. And then we are working with end users to iterate and see how things are working out in the field.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of Ukraine, obviously a tragedy, but from a capability development, I mean, that innovation cycle has got to be fantastic of seeing the latest and greatest as the EW fight and, different capabilities change. What would you say are one of the top couple lessons you've learned and where you've had the opportunity because you've learned, but you've had to pivot in order to really deliver value to your customers?
Frankly, we were quite late, to be honest and transparent about going and entering the Ukrainian market. This again, I think just came from initially the types of things that we were designing. It just wasn't front of mind for us to enter, a war zone. What we realized though is that the individuals and the teams and the organizations in Ukraine are doing phenomenal work. I mean, it is just so valiant and brave what they're doing and how innovative they're being. And they were pulling us and saying, "Hey, like again, we like your core technology, but it's not working in XYZ areas. Can you guys help us with this?" And what it's done to us has been it's been fairly transformational in terms of how we develop product now. One, the end customer requirements are becoming a key focus on our product roadmap. I'll speak to that in a second. But also then number two is just the speed of iteration in which how we put out new features and respond to requests. I think we've had a lot of maturation as a company building what used to be these general purpose long range Wi-Fi, and now we are laser focused on this segment and hearing their requests in real time, what's working, what's not working, what they want more of. That now is becoming the front and center in our product roadmap. So we literally have a team there that is do day in day out doing flight testing. They're working with partners on the front lines. These things are being fielded, and then we take capturing that feedback and we then build it into our monthly delivery plan from what we do on a software basis.
I was gonna say, but you can continue, sorry, but, like a use case or 2 of where you've seen this and what you did and how fast you turned it and the outcome.
One of the most complex, requests that we've gotten recently this past year has been essentially putting all these pieces together of needing anti-jamming and also needing a number of different drones as well as ground users on the same network to execute a mission. So let me paint the picture for you in 20 seconds, and I'll kind of explain what we did with it. This is you have two drones. You have one that's flying, let's say 1 or 2 kilometers away from a ground station. And then you have an expeditionary drone with some sort of payload that's going a significantly longer distance. And that one, the one going a significantly longer distance is the one that's getting, highly jammed, is the one that's, the one that's being attacked. And so we need to be able to communicate with that to view a video feed to see what it's doing. And then on the ground side, there is a number of users and soldiers who want to be able to see that video feed and be able to coordinate on a mission as that expeditionary drone is finding a target. So this is, as I was mentioning, it combines a lot of the challenges where you need to have a jam-proof link that as it's going out, you also need to be able to mesh a whole bunch of users together. And a layer on top of that, all of the safety where many of these people want to have no RF signature. Like the moment they have an RF signature, they become a target themselves. So how do you then make sure that these folks are able to listen and view the video feed while the entire network is also jumping around avoiding jamming attacks? So that's an example of a request that we got from multiple people. We started getting them in piecemeal ways, but then we started seeing, hey, here's an entire mission that we need to design around. And many of the features that we've pushed out since then have been in support of that. We've pushed out a number of new iterations on our anti-jamming algorithm. We call it Sense. So it's moving faster and faster and jumping between frequency bands a lot faster. Two, we're pushing out optimizations on our mesh and how anti-jamming plus mesh work together. We're very soon to release some new firmware that has, listen only modes and silent modes. And so, yeah, these are all pieces where we start giving, we think of things as in Lego blocks, like we build in a very modular fashion. And so we have this broader mission and we break down the problem and try and spread out solutions that then work in one, hopefully in a very nice symphony, kind of giving a very, very easy experience that works for the end user.
Yeah, it's very eloquent. What is the biggest challenge you think in EW that you've had to overcome? Is it, making it so that it can't detect RF? Is it the frequency jamming, how quickly that's changing? Like what piece in there is, technology wise, the most challenging that you've had to tackle?
To be honest, though, and fair, it is an ongoing thing that we will be working on for forever. And I think everyone in this space is going to be working on this for forever. We've all heard like this cat and mouse game, analogy. It is literally that. So there's been evolutions, maybe is how I could answer it, right? First, we were very lucky that we had the first multi-band radio of our style on the market. And it was requested to us actually by that US Army SRR program. They had requested the multiple frequency bands for very different reasons 5 years ago. They asked for it because of, for logistics and operational reasons. They can just ship a radio out or a drone with a radio that they don't have to swap out radios depending on the certifications and the different frequency allowances they have in different countries.
Right.
That's why they asked us for it. But then once the war broke out, we realized we could utilize it for this anti-jamming reason where we jumped around between different frequencies very quickly. So the first thing was putting together an algorithm that could, one, sense, hey, you're being jammed, jump to a different frequency band. Now what we're doing is, as I alluded to this earlier, we're trying to make this faster and faster because the jammers are getting faster and faster in terms of jumping and kind of chasing the operating frequency. To now we're putting together solutions and architectures that are theoretically jam proof. And this involves multiple different radios working in unison, where perhaps they're talking on different frequencies and, distracting a jammer, or even just some newer concepts that are going to be coming out in the coming months that should be trying to step outside of at least the current paradigm for how jamming happens and how anti-jamming works. So it's the hardest part for us is, I guess, as we've been talking about, really just focusing on the problem. Now that we're moving pretty quickly on this.
I think you bring up a great point too. You can't become stagnant and we figured it out. They're good because it is changing so quick. I chuckle. I used to, my previous aviation career, when we get comm jammed, literally it was a manual, like change frequency, they had a code word, and we had a preset frequency we go to. And then sometimes the channel hopping had like 5 different frequencies it was hopping through. It's archaic compared to what's going on now. And so it's just fascinating over what I would consider a pretty short time frame, you know, our sensors, our weapons, our radios, how that's all shifted, and you guys are in the forefront. But yeah, you can't be complacent in that.
I mean, it is really incredible what's happening in Ukraine. I mean, the people, what they're doing there it's so, I mean, I can't think of a different word besides just incredibly valiant.
Yeah. That's from both sides too, right? That's also
Yeah.
the Russians and the Ukrainians back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's similar to our thesis, but we've already seen it in security, cybersecurity. You've got more and more companies that are just outsourcing AI-enabled agentic AI type of threats. You can only counter with similar capability sets. How do you stay on top of that? Be
Mhm.
able to pivot, and because as soon as it happens, you got to pivot immediately. It's so fascinating. And so, do you have people on the ground in Ukraine doing this, or are you?
We do. We do. And they're some of our most talented field engineers, perhaps not surprising because they are in the thick of it day and night. I mean, the things that they deal with, like we'll be chatting with them on our chat and also say, hey, Gal, send this over in just a moment. The power went out. And this happens it's happening on a daily basis right now. And it's just the ingenuity that this team has is pretty incredible. And then we also try and work very closely with our partners, but back to the point about the different drone manufacturers and OEMs that their teams literally are on the front lines every day. And so we work with them pretty closely in terms of gathering their feedback and incorporating that into our roadmap.
Yeah, that's super exciting. So, how do you see you guys continuing to develop the appetite for improving drone capabilities? And I'll just use it's probably just more capabilities that drones can deliver, the autonomous nature of it. How do you see you guys fitting into that?
If we have everything working, what the broader trend across the market is, and even what some of the, requests coming out of the Department of War is we need more and we need them to be able to coordinate and cooperate. And we need to be doing things faster. And that's, what we're focused on again, like long term. We have what's unique about us coming from the commercial world and bringing the best of the commercial into the defense segment is our supply chain. Like we can rapidly turn up the dial and deliver millions of radios a year. We can do this at a price point that is significantly different and a fraction of what our defense focused competitors are charging the end user. And we plan to keep building, we have a hardware platform, but we plan to keep releasing new versions and improvements fairly rapidly. We have a pretty big release coming out next year as well. And so there's, in the US, there's we've been catching up on just the capabilities that our drones can offer compared to some Chinese alternatives. We're catching up quite a bit, but where we still have work to do is being able to do things at scale and at low cost, and we think that we can help quite a bit with that.
Where do you see the biggest innovation opportunities are for you? Is it through the software development and integration of, smarter and smarter, maybe even agentic AI at some point? Or is it more along the swap capability, the power requirements, the focus of that? Like, where do you see the biggest innovation changes coming your way?
It's actually it's a little bit of both, but we're investing a lot, especially on the AI side, and making our radios more and more intelligent is a necessity as the vehicles themselves become more intelligent. We're now starting to see the first drone swarms being released in the market, and you don't want to have just a dumb network connecting everything. You want to have highly intelligent ways that things are speaking to each other, that information is routed to be able to support larger and orchestrate larger and larger groups of vehicles. And similarly, we're also seeing we've been talking a lot about drones, but there's also a fairly large change in the tactical radio world. I mean, it's like these types of handheld radios. I mean, people are carrying these LMR. I mean, for a lot of they're walkie-talkies, and like they're old school stuff. And people now need to be able to connect to large groups of people and be able to send modern types of information across the board, right? You need to be able to send video. You need to be able to look at what your drone is seeing and be able to route information back to base. And And so we see that as a big opportunity that for us to help out as well.
Are you using that as an example, but it probably applies to other. So from like a vertically stacked capability set, are you creating the radios and that, or are you just bringing the waveforms and, when I say radios, I mean the walkie-talkies, for example,
Yeah.
you've got video. Are you creating that end product, or are you more creating the capability so that end product can deliver, the information required?
Good question. We are building the entire thing. What we specialize in as a company is the underlying technology. So there's networking, there's RF, so actually the analog waves, and then there is a bunch of software that goes on top. So that's our bread and butter. Like that's what we are really good at. And so that's why we started with these OEM things, right? Like it's all packaged really nicely into here, and it goes into somebody else's system. This is essentially an extension of that, where we're now putting that in a mechanical housing that is designed for an end user to carry, and all of the core underlying technology is still ours, and it's still the same. Like, these two things talk to each other. So we work on both of those, but the underlying technology and R&D that we do is one and the same.
Okay. No, that's cool. Obviously, security in these environments matter a lot. And I say security more of just the capability to operate in a contested environment where you're not detected. People can't intercept your signals. People can't jam. There are countries out there that are not good. There are countries that we would consider good. So you've worked with like DIU and different groups. The Blue UAS effort, is pretty important.
Mhm.
Supply chain security. And how has that helped shape road mapping and, I'd say the hardening priorities for your company?
Yeah, and it continues to. Actually, you just listed out a lot of the ones that we rely on. So we build to standards, like there are standards like MIL 10, 810H, for example, is a standard. There are also security standards like FIPS 140-3. And then there is just a broader evaluation and certification against these various standards. And that's where DIU has helped quite a bit. When we first released our radio platform, they subcontracted out to a security firm, like a third party security firm, that I think everything on the blue list has gone through a security validation. And unless you check all the boxes, then you don't really pass, you don't get on the blue list until you address those things. And then they also do, you touched on it, like the supply chain, and they look at your bill of materials and ensure that it's NDAA compliant and you're not pulling any critical components from China and related countries. And so we've 4 or 5 years ago, we had a broad sweep both across the technology as well as on our supply chain to make sure that we are meeting all of those types of requirements that are needed.
Man, you guys are doing some great things. I mean, and there's a lot there. It's not just
Yeah. That's just I'm glad you're saying it. It is very different building a hardware product as opposed to a software product. I spent a little bit of time as a product manager at Google, and very challenging also the stuff that's going on there, but it's a totally different beast when you have physical hardware and just all of the logistics and the types of things you have to go through. I mean, a couple of years ago, as everyone was dealing with COVID, I mean, that was such a crazy time, making sure that our products were never delayed. I mean, I was mentioning to you, we're on Airbus A320s. If we didn't supply our radio module to them, like, they couldn't deliver an airplane. Like, it was it's just the, in hardware, it's just a lot of coordination, which I personally love that stuff. I think it's hardware can be a lot harder than software. It's also where we focus now a lot. I think it's what some of our big competitive advantages. Us as a company, we have two primary locations. We have our US office, we have a Singapore office, and in Singapore is currently where our contract manufacturer sits. And up until now, we've been focused a lot on the US market, which continues to be the most important for us. But there's also just been a lot of geopolitical change since the beginning of the Trump administration. And so we've toyed with the idea of bringing manufacturing in-house versus being an outside contract manufacturer. And so these types of the flexibility that we've selected with our supply chain has become a very, very valuable thing and given our end customers a lot of flexibility. we have partners in the US also for that can handle our contract manufacturing. And so we have a made in US possibility and option. And so it's just always a trade-off for people when it comes to cost and timelines and made in the US versus made elsewhere. I mean, we're able to support all of those things.
Yeah, and scale being a big one. I mean, it's gotta be I'm just curious, yeah, software is one thing, hardware. How do you break up your oversight and response? Because you're thinking large strategic, right? Here's our
Mm.
supply chain, on the hardware side. You've got these are the partners. Here's our Ukraine division. Here's our innovative, let's put AI into everything. Here's our partner integration. I mean, it's got to be fascinating how you split that up and keep visibility all in that just from a span control.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're dealing with on a weekly basis, but as is, these are all good growing
Yeah.
problems, that we are building out our leadership team. And just a hot plug, if you or any listeners know any great people that might be interested in our company, we'd love some referrals. But we're growing really fast, and it's part of my job to try and keep all of the wheels running so that the good people can keep doing and executing on our priorities.
Clearing the roadblocks. Love it. So we're gonna have to wrap this up here. It's been fascinating, but we've talked a lot about the defense side. But if I were to look over to your commercial, the commercial capabilities, what is I would say, kind of the dual use tech on the commercial side that you see expanding rapidly, where there's just a lot of opportunity that you may look at or you are looking at to harness?
The markets seem quite different, but the requirements tend to have a lot of overlap. And what we try and do is across everywhere that we're designing, we try and find the most challenging requirements, design around that, and then propagate that across our customer base. So for example, on the defense side, people talk about large swarms. We have a warehouse customer with a whole bunch of picking robots that are going in and out of shelves and in and out of Wi-Fi line of sight. And I think we have over 100 nodes on a single network over there. And their requirements are even more challenging than some defense requirements in that they can't have more than a second of disconnect on a single robot, or the entire network pauses, at risk of robots colliding with each other. And so that is a highly challenging requirement that we then are able to bring over to others. In another way, we're working with a humanoid robot company, and they have incredibly high uptime requirements, essentially reliability. They can't have a single second of downtime in a month. I mean, it has to be continuous nonstop operation. And that was an example of something that we have very good uptime, but we had to actually iterate on some things for that particular customer to make sure that they hit that their requirements were met. And so then that again, it feeds into all of the rest of our customers. So that's kind of what we specialize in. We have this general platform, and then we get hit with very interesting requirements from different angles from these different markets. But then we try and bring it into some coherence across
Yeah.
all of our customers and our software.
So from an industry perspective, is it like these large warehouse and putting robotic swarm, like where do you see, is it in energy? Is it public safety? What's kind of a place that you're like, they are rapidly transitioning to using technology that requires your capability set? Where do you see that like growing the most?
Yeah, it's the two examples I gave you. It's the various types of robotics. So whether it's in-house warehouses or it's certain like humanoid types of things that have a larger or more complex requirement than just traditional Wi-Fi. There's also been this talk forever about drone delivery, which in certain markets this has finally started. But we have probably the best radio on the solution on the market, given our price point for this. So whenever this does take off, no pun intended, that this will hopefully, be something that ramps up quite a bit for our business as well. But that's where we specialize in. We specialize in long range, and we specialize in very challenging types of requirements at affordable price points. And so hopefully those things come together in the commercial space pretty soon.
It seems amazing. I had no idea Doodle Labs was involved in so much of my life, so it's fantastic. If folks want to learn more about you or they have referrals or want to come work for you, how best would they chase that down to connect with someone that can do something about it?
The best is, first of all, come go to our website, doodlelabs.com. Our sales team is very, very active and timely. So sales at doodlelabs.com, drop a note there and someone should get in touch as well. And then yeah, jobs, we careers.doodlelabs.com. We have a bunch of job postings up there as well. We're growing internationally, and so we're just looking for all sorts of smart people to join the team.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ash. This has been great, and I look forward to sharing a beverage sometime.
Thanks so much for having us, Dave. Pleasure meeting you.